all. So products, no matter if they're made in China or if they're made in America, you would think that bad review after bad review after bad review, they would take action to do something about it. And in most companies, they would. So I can't get around the mindset of the people that don't do this, but I'm just going to show you something here about this DNR, this DNA. Now, I don't know if it's the same across their product line for all vehicles, but at least for the Scion XB, and this one's a 2012, when you read the reviews, you see that they say that they have good construction as far as they fit right, right? So, but they usually about a month or 6 months later, the welds break at the hangers because the material is very thin, they say. And so these were a couple year ago reviews that I read. I said, well, shoot, this company's probably fixed that. If they saw time and time again that this was the case, they took action. I don't know if that's the case, but I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. Maybe you should do it as well. But then also there is something else that the review said too that I want to show you. So this is one section. Now, if you buy this exhaust for the Scion XB 2012, you may or may not know that you have something called, well, what's affectionately called the scuba tank. Okay, and this thing is massive. And what it is, it's a NOx bed. It's not a catalytic converter. NOx is nitrogens of oxide. It's kind of like a second stage cleaner. That one isn't even monitored by the O2 sensor. So if you were to, I don't know, it fall off while you're driving, or you cut it off or whatever, I'm not saying you should do that, but it won't register any check engine light because it's not a monitored system. And so it's massive. I mean, it's about like from here to here, and I mean, it's big. It does look like what you would wear on your back if you were scuba diving. And so it's pretty heavy. So by using this exhaust, you're going to save weight. So less weight means you're going to accelerate faster. Okay, it's not so much going to increase horsepower thereby, but anytime you can lighten the weight of your vehicle, it's going to go faster, right? So this part right here, for all intents and purposes, this is kind of like the replacement for your scuba tank. And what it looks like initially is what they used to call the cherry bombs. Okay, cherry bombs are a resonator. I guess you could use them as a muffler, but resonators were typically used to do that, just that. They were to kind of control resonance. Resonance is that raspiness, that raspy, fart can sound. And a lot of people don't know, but exhausts, you can tune them like you can a musical instrument. And it comes down to where placement of the muffler, placement of the resonator, along the path of the piping. And so a lot of times when engineers are designing exhaust for cars, they'll stick a resonator at the point in the exhaust system that they determined would help make the note more pleasurable. And so I don't know if this is an exact location, but it's certainly not the length. So when you're doing resonators, a lot of times what people will do is they'll just put cherry bombs in there, because cherry bombs, they look like resonators and they kind of function a lot like resonators. They have inside, there's a tube that kind of looks like an exhaust pipe, but it's got a lot of like cheese grater perforations in it. And encircling that tube is supposed to be some matting, some fiberglass or something to help control sound. These are the other 2 points of it, the parts, the piping. That's what's to be determined as your muffler, I guess. Now, same scenario. When you have this type of muffler, you are usually going to have pipe through with dimples in it, and there's going to be mat surrounding that, and that's going to be your noise deadening. If you have more of a traditional muffler, like more of a flatter oval type, they will actually have chambers in there where the exhaust comes in and then it's diverted with it almost looks like a labyrinth, okay? And it has matting and fiberglass and stuff in there too. So these usually, the reason they're kind of circular like that and big is because it'll have a lot of material inside there to help quelch noise. Before I show you the whole reason I'm talking to you about this stuff, This is the tip that came with this one. It's got the bluing on it, and it's a slip fit. And a lot of the people complain that the clamp that they give you to put these on with falls off and the tip falls off and stuff like that. That's one of the reviews that they saw a failure in this thing. Now, this is all pretty, I mean, it's pretty thin metal. I don't know what the gauge is. It is pretty thin. So the clamp that they give you, I suspect that when people are putting this on there, they're just not tightening it well enough, or the clamp is just a hair too big, so that even though you tighten the nut up all the way, it still has a little bit of play for this thing to be loose. What I would recommend to you is go ahead and put on your exhaust like you would. Take the tip with you to the exhaust shop. It's not going to be any louder with or without the tip on there as you drive over. Have the exhaust shop put it on, place it, and then in these sections here, they can run a bead, okay? There's 1, 2, 3. There's 3 of these around the circumference of the pipe. Just have them run a weld on there. Bob's your uncle. It's not coming off. It's that simple. With this tip removed, why I wanted to show you is looking in the end of this muffler, if you can see in there, and you can't, you can barely see it. Hold on. So kind of difficult to film for you, but you can see inside, that's the muffler. You see those little dimples in there? Those are perforations. Now, to the right or inside of there should be some glass mat and things like that that should act like a muffler, okay? And then here's your tip. If you notice, there's those slides I was talking about, or those openings. But you can see it goes in, and on the opposite side, it squashes down to more of an oval. But you can see this has those perforations as well. Now this is kind of heavy. I don't know if this has any of that mat in there or not. You can't really see it inside there. And when I try to shine the light in there, so yes, I did shove a pick inside there, and there is nothing inside of there. So I don't know why they would do that. I mean, the looks, all you do is basically take that nice sized pipe coming in and pinch down the flow coming out. I have no idea. That cannot add to any kind of noise cancellation or anything. But here is looking down on that straight piece pipe, this piece, and if you look down in there, whether from this end or from this end, you see no perforations whatsoever. So in actuality, this is nothing more than a stretched pipe for absolutely no reason. They could have gotten the same effect by just using a straight pipe through here. Because when you're talking about airflow, whether it's getting into the engine or out of the engine, you're looking for what's called bottlenecks. A bottle obviously is big at the base, and it comes and pinches down at the top. So you got all this air in the bottom of the bottle, but when it tries to get through that neck, it bottlenecks, okay? It kind of slows up. So although this is not a bottleneck per se, it's not a bottleneck. I mean, it's just some enlarged piece of pipe that they felt like putting it on here for looks. Complete waste of money to put this on there rather than just put a straight piece of pipe, unless they're under some kind of exhaust EPA guidelines or something, and maybe they're trying to trick the companies that monitor this kind of stuff, as if, you know. The welds on this, where each of these done, you can tell they're either done by computer, but they look pretty good. And here's one at a flange. Like I said, look pretty good. But again, this metal's pretty thin. But where everyone's complaining about is right here, where these hangers join the pipe. This is on all 3 pieces. Every time I see a picture, these two will stay welded together, these 2 bars. It's where they dislodge from the pipe entirely and leave like a quarter-size hole here. That's what the problem is. And you can see the welds, they don't look bad. The welds don't look bad at all. So I don't know if there's some impurity. You can see that the heat, you can see the little purple and orange and reddish. That's the heat getting into the pipe itself. So it's not a weld issue per se. I can tell you that right now, because you can see the heat penetration got all the way out here. You see that little shadow that comes out, those two little black smudges? It goes all the way out to there. So it got a good 3/4 inch penetration for heat. The issue is these pipes are so thin that the vibration and stuff that happens while you're driving down the road, and you can imagine the drone or the hum of this exhaust, that the heat expansion and the heat contraction as the car heats up and is used, then you let it cool down overnight. Yeah, I can see why that happens. So what do we do about it? Let's see. This is JB Weld Extreme Heat. Temperature resistant metallic paste. And so it says able to withstand continuous heat for 1,000 degrees. Can be used for filling cracks and holes in metal surfaces. Great for exhaust manifolds. You know those things get super hot. The exhaust gets hot, but not as much as the exhaust manifold. Tailpipes, mufflers, engine blocks, ductwork, heat exchange units, fireplace, outdoor grills. The part number for this is 37901. AutoZone, O'Reilly's, Advanced, Checker Shug, Kragen, I don't know, all those places will have it. So what we're going to do, well, first let me tell you about the instructions. First, it says to prepare, remove dirt, debris. This thing in closer here. Remove dirt, debris, or loose contaminants. Okay, sandpaper to roughen. You could use sandpaper. Once you use the sandpaper, though, clean it off with some brake cleaner. Get all that sand off. For some repairs, open small cracks, all right, and further drill a hole with a drill or screwdriver to create a 1/8 inch gap. Okay, so if you have a crack in your exhaust, you know, grind it out a little bit bigger so it can be a little bit larger. And then you mix this stuff. You open it up and you mix it thoroughly and apply it generously, working on the surface or into the hole, crack, pit, or seam. And repeat as needed. Allow 2 to 4 hours to set up. Test cure by pressing a fingernail or thumbnail into the repair material. If unable to penetrate, then repair is complete. So you wouldn't want to use it before then. If unable to penetrate, if area repairs appear slightly soft, use a non-flame heat source. Be like a heat gun. They don't want you to use a butane torch, any kind of like live flame. It'd be like a hair dryer, a heat gun, like you might use for heat shrink on tubing, stuff like that. Or allow 24 hours before high heat exposure. In other words, don't use it for 24 hours. So the idea here is, even though this is light material and this could pop out, what we're going to want to do, we're going to want to put that stuff so it extends further out, right? So we're going to come way out here, okay? Because usually they break and they're about right out here, but we're going to come way out here with this stuff. We're going to just puddle it around and kind of like make like a patch around here. Just basically fill it up till it touches these things here, and maybe even overlap them. Maybe come up and just crawl up on top of these things. And what you're trying to do is you're going to be basically increasing the area or the contact patch that these things have to grab on. If these things just got a quarter size piece of metal, that thin metal to hold on to, if you extend this out, then you got like a silver dollar sized. So it will make it stronger. This will actually disperse the weight out further out. And you'll want to do it at every one of these locations where you see these hangers on there. And this one as well. And by doing so, I think it'll help solve the problem with those things pulling out like they do. But one other point to make: the key when you're installing exhaust is to install all the exhaust together. Do not tighten any flanges until you get all the pipes together, okay? So you're going to put the front pipe on, the third pipe on, the last pipe on, and you're just going to kind of snug them up a little bit, and you're going to one by one then work from front to back and just start tightening them up. So now naturally these are just on here for protection, but you're going to have rubber hangers on here. One of the reviewers said, "Hey, broke a rubber hanger, what junk?" Well, man, your rubber hangers are probably just shit. You should have just changed them out. They do get old. They are rubber. So, but that'll help. My point being is if you put on the front pipe and you tighten it to all balls, put on the second pipe and you tighten it to all balls, you could put a bind on this thing to where the weight maybe rides more on this side than this side. It's not equal distribution. And that could actually add to maybe the stress that's put on these things and could be why they break. Could be, I don't know. Now, the only thing when I was talking about sanding them, I'm going to use this wire brush here and I'm going to really, work it in on this side and that side and kind of get in there as best I can, because they need you to rough up these pipes so that this stuff has a better chance. You're basically etching the pipe so that that stuff can go in there and soak into those scratches and hold on tighter. So make sure you do that. Sand it really good. All right, I hope this is gonna help you. So this stuff sets up pretty quick. So just kind of one little bottle like that should be enough if you're just doing it for this purpose here to do all three. But see how heavy I've laid it on there? And I've kind of ramped up. I've ramped up to the rod so that it would feel that emptiness in between where, it's very little bit of weld there. So what this does is it basically creates you might want to look at it like just a big thick weld that's been kind of laid out further from the original patch, right? So it goes all the way around. And don't worry about what this looks like, because are you crawling under your exhaust looking at this stuff? So it does set up pretty quickly, so you got to work pretty fast. But the idea is just to coat it up, and you see when I press on it here, you can actually mold it a little bit once it gets on there and before it start getting hard. Man, it's almost like it's concrete or something. but it's not. And of course I've done that final one there. See how I just spread it all the way out? That's your goal, is just spread it out. Get a little bit more strength circulated around, kind of like spread out the load on that pipe so that it's not all pulling on just that one section right there. Now it's trying to pull all this off, and it's just not going to do that. So like I said, if you don't like the look of it, maybe you could spray paint it silver or something like that once it gets done drying or whatever. Secondary question be, well, what happens if this thing breaks anyway? You'll have all that goo on, they're not going to be able to weld that. Well, at that point, the exhaust shop can use their own rods here, and they'll end up grinding that stuff off, and they'll end up being able to put a patch over that hole. And they could probably use a thicker wall metal, like say take an exhaust pipe, stand it vertical, cut it in half to where now you have like what looks like a small collar that you can lay over that hole. They'd weld that collar onto that hole to block it, and then weld these rods or new ones on and hang it just like you need it to. So all's not lost if they do end up breaking it anyway.